Hello, guys, this is Chichi here. Today, I want to talk to you about a different question, which is what does it mean to actually be better at Dota? Well, I have a lot of new players that keep asking me for my help. What they usually say is something like either, oh, I want to get a higher MMR and I don't know how, I've been stuck in 500 or something. Or I actually want to be really good at this game. Tell me everything that I need to know, the builds, the heroes, etc. Well, it's a lot to take in at once, first of all. And second, what I noticed is most people don't know what it actually means to be better at the game. What makes a difference between a good player and a bad player, and what can you do if you start playing and you actually want to get better? Well, you probably saw my other videos on stuff like training with bots and stuff like that, but there's way more to that is theoretical that I want to explain to you. So let's just say first that we can do a very easy comparison with the sport if you want. Let's say, for instance, you want to run and you want to be better at running long distance than anyone else. Well, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, you're going to practice a lot, right? That seems fairly obvious. So with Dota, there's no difference. If you want to actually get better at the game, you need to play and you need to play a lot. And there's no way around this. Right now, the best players in the world have been playing not for 1 or 2 years, they have been playing for 5 or 6. They are really good because they spend hours each day playing this game, besides other things that I'm going to talk about, of course. But so the first thing I want to transmit to you is maybe you actually don't want to spend that amount of time in the game, or maybe you can't even. Maybe you're just a student having fun playing the game now. That's fine. You don't need to be the best at Dota. It's still just a game. So bear in mind that when you say I want to become a pro player, that might mean some kind of investment that you're not really prepared to make or that you can't make, and that's completely fine. So first of all, you can decide for yourself: do I want to become better also just because of the sheer pleasure of it? Do I want to become better because I think it makes it more fun? That's also fine. Do you want to get more MMR? Easy. So, okay, second step. Now that you've practiced a lot, as like the runner in my example, imagine you go to this runner contest and you realize that there's this guy that won the race compared to you, and you don't know exactly why. And then you look at him and suddenly you realize, oh, wait, he practiced exactly the same amount of hours that I did, but he is running with this amazing Adidas shoes, and I'm running with my socks. I never thought about this before. This might sound really silly to you, but it's just a way to make you understand something that we could call making the right choices. Sometimes practicing isn't enough, and you need to, besides practicing a lot, actually learn with that and know what you can do to become better and know what is the right thing to do at the right time. So if you're in a game, what does this mean? What does this translate into? This means you need to know well the heroes and you need to make good choices with them. For instance, if you're playing a mid hero, you know you need to choose your build correctly. You need to execute correctly also, and you need to decide where in the map you want to be at each time and doing what. And those decisions need to be better than your opponents. Basically, that's what it means. So, first of all, practice. Second, making the right choices, understanding what that means. And now we're getting to the part of, okay, but what if I'm still not good enough? What if I keep doing all these things that you say, but I'm stuck at 2k? Well, that happens probably because of one of two reasons. And one of those is, I have good news: Dota isn't a sport, although I have been making this comparison. Well, in Dota, not only do you need to practice, but you also need to, and there's no way around this word also, you actually need to study. Dota is a game that has a lot of knowledge involved. You have 113 heroes, you have probably around 100 items, you have all the skills and all the skill interaction to learn. You need to learn things as different as how the map works and how the heroes work, and all of that knowledge, there's no way around it. To know it by heart is to be better at the game. Because let's say an example for you, a very easy example for most people that play the game. If you ever played against, let's say, a Bloodseeker, if you don't know the game well enough, you don't know what it means when he does a very weird gesture with his arms and there's this rupture sound suddenly. And you start walking around and you see all this blood and you're losing life and you panic and you have no idea what's happening. Well, if you knew the hero, you would know that basically, very simply put, if you walk, you get damaged. If you stay still, you don't get damaged. You would also know this is the ultimate of that hero that only comes at level 6 if you want to skill it at that point. And you would know a lot of other things also, including how to counter it, what does it actually mean in a team fight, etc. This kind of thing is what I would call the knowledge part about Dota, that you also need to master. Finally, after the training so much, trying to make the right decisions and learning with your mistakes, and actually trying to get more knowledge of the game, there's something that's inevitable, and you don't need also to beat yourself about it, which is there's a thing in Dota that's ultimately called a mix of talent with luck. There's a lot of luck in the game itself. If you ever played, you'd know. Let's say just heroes like PA are the ultimate example of what luck means in the game. But also, there's something that is more deep into what it means to be good at the game. We're all good at something. It doesn't mean we all have to be good at the same thing. And if you have fun at Dota, you have fun at the game, but maybe you're actually not playing it correctly to the maximum extent you could. And maybe you're just not talented enough. Maybe you try your hardest, but you can never get last hits correctly in the mid lane. And that's also fine. But what happens with the best in the world is all of these things come together, and you're not only someone that trains a lot, that knows a lot, but also someone that actually is really good at doing that, talented, basically. So these are the things that make you good at the game. Now, one thing that I want to still tell you, the good news here, because I don't want everyone to be upset about after this video and saying, "Oh, she's basically saying we all suck and there's nothing we can do about it." No, 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 that's not what I mean. I also don't mean you need to sit at home and study all the intricacies of the game, or just go to college and get a math degree, because without math you can't play Dota. That is not the truth. There's some basic stuff that you can super easily learn. You don't even need to study them. If you really want, just playing the game might just slowly get you this knowledge that's enough for you to play the game and have fun with it. And also, if you keep learning with your mistakes just by playing, just completely having fun with it, you will learn eventually. So you don't need to know a lot to actually also just do well in the game. If you want to get better, you can also just do it incrementally, and you don't need to know by heart every hero. Maybe you can, for instance, specialize in one or three or two heroes, or one position in the game. Or you can go slowly and trying to learn as you can, and every time practice this different thing as you go along. You also don't need to actually know very difficult things to keep in mind, like the actual math that I was saying. You don't need to know how much health points every hero has, or exactly how much damage a spell makes. Of course, it helps you, but that doesn't mean you can't live without it. You can. You just have to have this general notion of things. Basically, you need to understand around which damage we're talking about, around which HP we're talking about, and you need to guide yourself in the game according to those things. Okay, now that all of this is said, how to actually get better in the game. Just telling you something that makes more sense than going into the internet and watching videos on skill builds and item builds, because that is not enough. There's something else. And I've tried to explain this a lot of times, and I've come up with kind of a theory, which is, I think, in my opinion, there are four things in this game that make you really good. Four things. If you master those four things, you are probably really good at the game. That's what happens with competitive players. Sometimes people master one or two and they don't master others, and they're medium. Worst players don't know what those stuff even means. And what are these four things? Well, the first thing that I think is really basic and easy to understand is execution. And what does execution mean? Well, if you started playing Dota, one of the first things you learn, and one of the first things everyone tells you, is you need to learn how to last hit. Last hit means killing a unit yourself, either a hero or a creep, and getting the respective gold and XP that brings. And if you know a bit about the game because you've been playing for a bit, you also understood the importance of this because those are the things you want to have in the game. You want to have gold, you want to have items, and you only get those if you learn how to last it. So far, so good, right? Well, last hitting is a thing that you only know how to do if you train it also, and if you actually understand how it goes with just right clicking and understanding that kind of thing. So I would call this execution. Execution is also what happens if you want to use a spell correctly and you don't understand how it works, and you need to understand if it's a spell that you need to click on a hero, if it's a spell that you can just click around somewhere, those kind of things. So this would be execution. First step into the game, fairly easy for you to understand. If you want to apply it to positions, just think as a core. I just talked about last hitting, that's really important. As a support, execution would be knowing how to do things like pulling and like, let's say, wording, for instance. I would say that's execution, okay? Also staying alive, things like that. Okay, so now what is the second step into this getting better at Dota thing? Well, the second step, we talked about it before, it's the knowledge part again. If you don't have knowledge about the things, you're always kind of impaired because you don't actually know what your hero does, so you don't take it to the full potential, and you don't know what other heroes do, so you also don't know exactly how to deal with them because the only way you understand how to play better against them is to know exactly what they are and how they work and function. So the second step, it's knowledge. Now we come to the last two things, and I think these two are the ones that people most forget about. You usually don't hear about this in any discussion about MMR, and I still don't really understand why. Why is no one talking about this? Well, in a game of Dota, you know now it's 5 versus 5. You have a map, you have objectives that you have to take. Ultimately, what wins you the game is taking each other's throne, the ancients. You don't win the game if you have more kills, or if you have more KDA, or if you have more gold than everyone else, right? What you actually need to do is get to the point where you destroy that building in the end of the map. Well, this for me screams game. The Dota is a game of strategy. Strategy, it's what it's about. And basically what this means is sometimes you have to be smarter than your opponents, and you have to think strategically and in the long run. You need to think, if you're doing something now, what's the repercussions that's going to have later in the game. Getting an item right now, what's going to be its purpose later, stuff like this. You need to understand where you want to be and when. And this is strategy, and it's going to make you better at the game. Another thing that's easily strategy that you can understand in higher levels is drafting. It's something that most players don't do because we also don't play captain's mode. But if you ever play the mode where you actually have to decide the composition of the team for everyone, you will understand that another thing that wins a lot of games is actually team composition. You need to have an equilibrium. Something very basic for people that just started playing and probably already heard it. If you have a team full of supports, you're going to lose. If you have a team full of cores, you're probably also going to lose. What ideally you want is equilibrium between everything, because that's strategy also. And strategy in Dota is deeply connected to the idea of efficiency that I would like to explore better in another video, because what's going to win you the game besides everything else, you can't just say being better than the opponent. What's going to actually win you the game is being more efficient. That's what's going to win you the game. So I would like to talk to you about that better after, but for now, you only need to know this. One of the parts about being really efficient is strategy. So far we have three things, right? We have execution, knowledge, and strategy. Those three things are what make a good player. Now, finally, and this you also heard of, I don't think it is possible to be a really good player in Dota and completely keep growing as a player if you don't actually know how to team play. Dota is not a solo game. You're playing with other four human beings. There's no way around that, unless you're always playing boss, of course. But ideally, you want to communicate with them and to actually organize in such a way that you can do the strategy part that I told you about, and also the execution part, all in harmony. If you don't do it in harmony, the game is probably not going to work. And you're going to notice that the team that wins is also the team that most of the times played better together. They know when to be together in the map and not. They know how to do things at different timings or not. They behave as a team. And there's no way else around this. So if you ever heard the famous jokes about I lost because of my team, well, you didn't, but of course in part you might have, but reality is team, which means there's 5 people. You're one of those 5 people. So the loss for a game is always divided between the 5 of them. There's no way around that. So if those 5 work together to try their best, chances are they're going to do better than the 5 that didn't play together at all. So, last thing that I think really makes you a better player at Dota, and you should train just as much as you train everything else, is how to be a better team player. What does this mean also, just being a better team player? Does this mean I have to be one of those super annoying, nice people that in the beginning of the game just throws smileys at the game? No, that's not also what it means. It means you have to, first of all, communicate with your team. Even if it's just the basics, you have all those different ways of doing that, like those automatic answers that you can use with your keyboard or something like that. You can just even alt click your abilities to tell someone that a very important ulti of yours is in cooldown or something like that. There's a various degrees to this, but basically, the more you talk with your team, the better chances you have of winning. The more you talk with your team in a, let's call it a polite way, if you're not insulting them, if you're actually trying to make everyone come together into a good plan, more chances you have of winning. So for me, it's very simple. If you want to be better at Dota, there's 4 things you need to think about. And there's no way around this, and those 4 things include everything from learning hero builds to training how to last hits in some lobby. Those 4 things are execution, knowledge, strategy, and team play. And those 4 things basically define what a better player is. And I would like to finish this video by just doing a comparison between this and MMR. As you know, MMR is those points that you get from the game based on this very difficult equation that I'm not going to talk about because a lot of people did it already for me. You have all these videos explaining MMR. What I want to tell you for as a new player and in a very simple way is what's actually the deal with MMR. Why do we have some people that keep saying they want to get more MMR but they can't? They are stuck at this at this levels of skill, or why do you also hear some people saying, "Oh, I'm better than my skill brackets right now," or something like, "Oh, skill brackets don't matter at all, and MMR doesn't mean anything." Well, none of these people are right. Not it's something very complex, but at the same time very simple. If you want to think about the simple part of it, MMR is literally a number of points that you get for winning a game. Let's just start by this. If you win the game, you get points. If you lose the game, you lose points. So easy. You just need to win games. Now, the difficult part comes in, of course, right? Oh, that sounds so easy, but how do you actually win? Well, to win, or to up your chances of winning, you have to master the 4 things I just told you about. You need to be good at execution, you need to be good at strategy, you need to be a good team player, and you need to have knowledge about the game. The better these 4 aspects are, the better you're going to perform. And all of these things matter to winning a game in different ways. Sometimes, maybe in a very specific game, just actually being a very good team player is going to help you more than execution in itself. Maybe you actually also just missed a lot of stuns and it went horrible for you and you fed a bit. But you still were the soul of the game. You still tried to make everyone come together with this plan, and you still made good decisions, and you still win the game. You see, sometimes, on the other hand, maybe your entire team was completely disconnected of each other. You had terrible supports, and you were an anti-mage that was the core trying to farm and doing his best to actually carry the game by himself. And your execution was so good, and your knowledge also, that you did a bit of strategy around how to ignore everyone and farm and actually push objectives. And maybe that game you win with that. You see, we can't really tell which one of these matters more and how, but all of this matter. And having more MMR is always just going to be about this, about winning the game, which has all these very hard factors to count in. So when you hear someone saying that MMR doesn't matter, well, it's not true. People that have higher MMR, they actually are better at the game. There's no way around that. And you know why? Because they have higher MMR because they won more games. And they won more games because they are better at this stuff. Or if you want to think even in a simpler way, you're going to notice that the highest MMRs are also people that played the game the most. They played the game a lot. So that's why they're so good, right? So that's easy to understand. If you just started playing now and you just you calibrated at 2K, you're really happy about yourself. Well, you're not that bad, but you're also, of course, not as good as a 4K. There's no way around that. And that's also fine. And the way I want to end this video is to tell you how it's always strange for me to hear people talk about MMR in this game and giving it so much importance and then letting it affect their experience so much. Well, if you want to actually become a pro player for some reason, if you're really interested in getting better at the game just because you like competition so much or for whatever reason you might have in your head, well, that's fine. You don't also if you have a friend like this, let's say you have a friend that's exactly like this, you don't need to call him a tryhard. That's just what he likes to do, right? He likes to play this game to the fullest and he tries to get better and better at it. And that's fine. But if you also want to be a player that plays for fun, if you only have time to play this game at weekends because you have work during your week, or because for whatever reason you're not into playing every hero, you just like, I'm not saying names here, but you just like to play Wind Ranger, and you always want to pick Wind Ranger, and you want to play Wind Ranger support and core just because the hero is so fun for you. Well, you can do that, and no one is also supposed to call you noob or say that you're not as smart as anyone else. No, of course you are. It's just a game. In the end, Dota is exactly just that. It might be a competitive game, it might be a esport, but it's just a game. So if you want to play it as a game to just have fun and relax for a bit, that's also completely fine. You don't need to strive to get MMR in this game. So okay, this is what I wanted to tell you about my thoughts on these things because I keep being asked about a lot of this, and I think this better general idea of what things mean in a way that is not just telling you, oh, you need to be good by being the Lina that goes mid and has this specific build and does this specific things. I think understanding in general what it means to be or not to be better at this game, it helps. Especially if you never played a MOBA before, so now you have a better knowledge of that. And I'd like to end with just this message that applies to everything else that I just said, which is you've probably heard this before a lot. What is the only one person that you can control in Dota, and what is the only one person that you can really improve on and rely upon? And it's yourself, of course, right? But I think this is not only something that you should hear about getting better at the game, the whole don't blame your team, concentrate on yourself because you're the only player that you can control, but also concentrate on yourself to realize what you actually want out of the game. Because the only person that also can decide what you want, if it is to grind MMR or if it is just to have fun, it's you. So whatever you do, try actually to just be a decent human being and do whatever you want and whatever you think it's best. And you're gonna see the results. And everyone that tells you the opposite, everyone that goes to you and says, oh no, being nice definitely never helped in my games, well, they're lying. I'm sorry, but they're probably just very exhausted people that are trying their best but not being really good teammates and not having fun in their games anymore because they're trying so hard and they don't see the other parts of this process. So just relax, have fun, and to get better at the game, don't forget the four things that I told you about, which are execution, knowledge, strategy, and team play. And this is all for now. Goodbye. I hope this helped.